everyone, and welcome back to Cinema. I'm your teacher, Professor Garcia, and today what we are going to talk about is plot structure. Now, have you ever read a story or watched a film and it didn't quite gel, it was missing something? Well, we're going to cover that today. We're going to go over in detail all of the different elements of plot that make a story work. So let's get started. First, we need to talk about what plot actually is. The word plot is just another fancy name for story. And structure, I want you to close your eyes for a second and think of the first thing that pops into your head. Structure. What did you see? I'm pretty sure you saw a building, but not a completed building, more like an erector set of a building. And so that's exactly what it is. It's the skeleton of the story. And every story since the beginning of time is the same. They are constructed the same. And they've had a lot of years to kind of iron out what works and what doesn't work. And we're going to go over each of those elements today. The first part of any plot is called the exposition, or it can be called the prologue, or it can be called the setup. It goes by a bunch of different names, but it's all roughly the same thing. And here is what every beginning of every story since the beginning of time needed to have. It has 4 components. First, we need to know the setting. We need to know when and where this thing is taking place. And if you don't give that right away, your audience starts trying to guess what it is. And if they're thinking about what, where, and when the story is taking place, they're not with you in the story. And this is why in movies, they always tell you at the very bottom of the screen where this thing is happening. If it doesn't give you a when, it's happening right now. If it gives you a when, it will tell you exactly when it's happening. In the past, in the future, somewhere in that. You even do this when you are telling a story to your friend. When you go, yesterday I was walking down the street. We know the time, yesterday, and we know the where, the street. And see, you do that in every single story, because if you don't, your audience gets lost. The second element that has to be there is we need to be introduced to the major characters.
A year ago, these cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened?
Who should we, the audience, care about? We need to know that. We don't need to know all of the side characters. We definitely don't need to know backstory. All we need to do is be introduced to who the main players in this story are. Next, the next thing that you have to set up is what the rules of the world are. The rules of the world, it may sound a little scary or confusing, but it's really not. Every single story that is told is not happening in our reality. It's happening in a completely new reality. Even when you tell us a story about something in your life, it's not happening in our reality. It's happening in a new one. One where you are the hero, where you are defeating all of the events of the universe, and we, the audience, are supposed to root for you and be with you, or we are you in this story. And so, there are some certain conventions that a lot of times stories use, and we've come to accept them as real. Things like love at first sight. Now you know this because you've seen the main characters see each other and fall in love.
They say when you meet the love of your life, time stops. And that's true.
Well, that's not realistic in any way. That doesn't happen in real life. It happens in movies because we need you, the audience, to understand these two are meant to be together. Well, the only way we do that is we show you that fate has it in for these two. And that is used through this concept or the rule of love at first sight. But in real life, the only people who believe in love at first sight are stalkers. Another rule that is commonly accepted is this idea of true love. You've heard it in movies.
This is true love. Think this happens every day?
Well, what is true love? Tolstoy said it best. If there are as many hearts as there are people, then there are that many ways to love. And that's true. You have a different relationship and a different love with everything in your life. So, do you love food? Do you love your parents? Do you love your significant other? Now, do you love all of those the same way? No, absolutely not, because that's disgusting and illegal. But that doesn't mean that any of that love is less true than the other. It just means that it's different. Now, in a movie, though, we need you to understand that the love the two main characters have is more special and should be valued greater than the love that they have for anyone else in their relationships. And that is for you, the audience, to want to root for that couple. So that is another common rule of the world. But this extends into other things. So if it's Harry Potter and you want magic in your world, well, you need to set that up in the beginning. That's part of the rules of your world. If there are superheroes, we need to set that up in the beginning. We need to know any basic information in order for us to understand the rest of the story. We need to know that right away in the beginning, and that's where the rules of the world are set up. So if this is Inception,
We create the world of the dream. We bring the subject into that dream, and they fill it with their secrets.
Then you break in and steal it.
Well,
we need to know that in the beginning. All right. The final thing you have to set up before you can start your story is we need to understand what a normal day is like. You have to establish normal.
Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. In a few moments, you will pass through these doors and join your classmates.
Keep an eye on the staircases. They like to change.
Good afternoon, class. Welcome to your first flying lesson. Stick your right hand over the broom and say up. Wow.
Now, we don't live in a world with magic, and so we need to, as the audience, understand, okay, what does a world of magic look like? How does it operate? And what is a normal day? So that we, the audience, understand when something happens that makes it change. When you break normal, you have to set up normal so you can break it. Even jokes do this. That's why you have a rule of 3. You set up the expectation, you reinforce the expectation, and then you break the expectation. And that allows the audience to know that something has changed and we are on board with you. The next event is called the inciting incident. Now, the inciting incident doesn't mean like, hey, it's incite. To incite means to start. So the inciting incident is the thing that happens that causes everything else to happen. This is Harry Potter getting the letter to go to Hogwarts. This is Peter Parker getting bit by the spider. This is the two lovers meeting for the first time and them experiencing that connection. This is the thing that happens that causes every single thing else to happen. But your inciting incident cannot happen until all of the other elements have been established. We need to know those first. Now, the inciting incident can also be called a catalyst because usually it's a call to action. It's asking the main character to tackle this problem. It's the presentation of a problem. Now, the next segment right after the inciting incident is called debate. Now, in the debate section, the main character is wondering whether or not that character wants to take on the problem or not. Because usually it's a complicated, scary problem, just like you have in your life.
I've been staring at the edge of the water long as I can remember, never really knowing why. I wish I could be the perfect daughter, but I come back to the water no matter how hard I try.
It's complicated, it's scary, it's not easy, so they have to kind of debate whether or not they should do it. Now, eventually a decision is made. Now, the main character can make that decision, or in the case of Star Wars, Luke says, no, I'm not going to go with you, Obi-Wan, and he comes home and his entire family is murdered. So now the decision is made for him. He has no home. He has to go. And so that right there is the end of Act 1. If you're going to turn this into a 3-act structure, that decision being made is the end of Act 1. Act 1 sets up the world that you live in, presents the problem, and then the problem just starts to begin. Aaron Sorkin said it best, in Act 1, you want to introduce your main character, introduce a tree, and then chase the main character up into the tree at the end of Act 1. Act 2, this part is called Fun and Games, or it can also be called The New World, because this section right here is really the fun part for the audience. The main character is in a brand new world, and the world of Act 2 is the complete opposite of the world of Act 1. So if things were safe and easy, Act 2, now everything is dangerous and unstable. So in Central Intelligence,
I got a plan. It might get us both killed, but if it works, it'll be a totally boss story. Cool?
No, it's not cool.
Cool.
No, I said it's not cool.
we have Kevin Hart, who is an accountant and has a boring life. And then once he decides that, or once the decision is made that he is going with The Rock, now he's being chased by government officials, he's almost dying every 5 seconds, and we the audience love to watch this. If it's Moana, her boring life on the island is completely upended in Act 2 when she is at sea and nothing is stable anymore. She's meeting demigods. By the way, that's also something you can do, is introduce a secondary plot point at this time. So, Maui getting his hook. That's a secondary plot point. It's not the main part of the story, but it is a big part of the story, and that is introduced after the inciting incident and in the fun and games section. This does not always have to be fun though. In the movie Sicario, we have a character who is a DEA agent, her team is blown up, and then that's the inciting incident. Oh no, I'm sorry, that's not the inside. Her team is blown up, and then she's given the choice that she can go and hunt down the people who killed her friends. She debates whether or not she's going to do it, then the decision is made, and then she enters a world where now the cops do not play by the rules. The government officials do not play by the rules, and this is not fun, but it is a different world than we had in Act 1. The next thing that you're going to have is the midpoint. This happens right in the middle of your story, and it's usually a victory or a defeat. It's a small one, it's not a huge one. If it's a sports team, the sports team may win the game, or they'll lose the game, but they'll almost win the game. They'll start working together.
Okay, Petey, don't you drift to the strong side.
Coach, they're calling a holding penalty on me every time.
Did I ask for your excuses? You want to act like a star? You better give me a star effort, do you hear me? Forget about him. Alan, you're in. Come on. All right. Now, I don't want them to gain another yard. You blitz all night. And if they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out. You make sure they remember forever the night they played the Titans.
And during the fun and games or the New World section, the main character is learning things about themselves that they will later use to defeat the villain in the finale.
Did you see that, Mom? I did the thing! Mom! Yeah!
But the midpoint is a true test where the hero either succeeds or is defeated. And that happens right in the middle of your story. Now the next section right after the midpoint is the bad guys close in. So now the villain is aware that the hero is a threat. So the villain, whoever or whatever the villain is, starts to send forces that start to attack the hero and the hero's team. So now, forces are closing in, the team is starting to unravel, and pressure is mounting for this main character. Then you reach the all is lost moment. The all is lost moment is a crushing defeat. If a mentor is involved, a mentor or a sidekick is either killed or they can be captured. Something drastic happens that is completely devastating to the main character.
We're only here because you stole the heart in the first place.
Now, we're here because the ocean told you you're special and you believed it.
I am Moana of Motunui. You will board my boat.
Goodbye, Moana.
Sail across the sea.
I'm not killing myself so you could prove you're something you're not.
Restore the heart of Te-Fiti. The ocean chose me.
It chose wrong.
So they have all of these different elements, but this is a big crushing defeat, and this leads us into our next section, which is one of the most important. The Dark Night of the Soul. The Dark Night of the Soul is the moment where the character wants to give up. They are at their lowest. They're contemplating suicide. They're wanting to end the entire journey that they're on, and they feel like they are a complete failure.
I'm not the right person. You have to choose someone else. Choose someone else. Please.
This is a big moment because this happens in everybody's life. And anytime you tackle a problem, this is going to hit you at a certain moment. Now, one of the best examples of it that I can think of is in Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, when Frodo Baggins is looking around and he's watching all of his friends die. Horrible things are going on. He feels lost and he just sits down and wants to give up. And his best friend, Samwise Gamgee, looks at him and he says,
I know. It's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here. But we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end. Because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you. That meant something. Even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going. Because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? But there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
And this is why the Dark Night of the Soul is so important, because we all reach our dark moment in any kind of situation that we take on. But it's that moment that makes us human. Even in the Bible, Jesus hits this moment. right? But there's going to be some kind of mentor figure, sidekick figure that helps give you the advice you need at that moment to help overcome yourself so that you can take on your main villain. Now, this is the end of Act 2, and now we're moving into Act 3, which is the finale. Going back to Aaron Sorkin, Act 1 is where we introduce the world, we introduce the character, we introduce the tree, then we chase the hero up into the tree, and Act 2, we just throw rocks at the hero and make their life miserable. Now in Act 3, we're going to take the hero down out of the tree, but you had to introduce how they get out of the tree in Act 1. So this is where your theme comes in. The theme is usually stated early on in the story, but the hero does not understand what it truly means until the dark night of the soul or in the finale. But then we go into Act 3. The finale. The finale is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is the final conflict between the hero and the villain, whoever or whatever those two things may be. They finally collide, there's some kind of epic battle, and in the end, we're waiting for the climax. The climax is the highest point of tension. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. That both people have a gun and it's eyes, trigger, and then finally there's a gunshot. Well, the climax is not the gunshot. The climax is the moment right before the gunshot. Tension. If the climax is the highest point of tension, the highest point of tension is where we are waiting for something to happen, not something happening. That's why in romantic movies it takes so long for people to kiss. Because we're playing with the tension of these two kissing. Once they kiss, it's over. They're going to be together. But until they kiss, we have some drama. So finally, once the climax happens, now we're into the falling action, or the dénouement. So you're going to learn a new word today. Say this with me. Dénouement. 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 Now the dénouement is the falling action. It's French, meaning to untie or unknot. And tension is designed to tie knots in your stomach. Well, the dénouement is the untangling of those knots.
Who you truly are.
This is where things return to as normal as possible. Are they ever going to be normal? No. They're going to get as close as they can. Now we're going to end with our final thing, and it also, I skipped this at the beginning, but I want you to pay attention to it. The opening image and the closing image. The opening image is who the character is at the very, very beginning, and the closing or final image is who you leave us with. Now, every single story is about the transformation between a caterpillar to a butterfly. Always. And so what we want to do is set up who these characters are at the beginning of their journey and at the end. If it's Luke Skywalker, who's the little farm boy? And then he's the hero being the hero of the galaxy with a medal and friends. Or if it's Moana, a little girl in love with the water, and at the end she is the queen commanding the sea. So what we have are the caterpillar and the butterfly. We start off our story with the opening image, letting us know who they are, and we end our story with the closing image, the final image of who they are at the end, and we, the audience, see ourselves as that character. So now we are going to get to your assignment. What I want you to do is I want you to watch a television episode or a movie. You get to pick, it doesn't matter whichever one you want, but I want you to break down the plot. I want you to figure out what the major elements are in the beginning. I want you to identify the opening image, then I want you to identify the setting, the rules of the world, what normal is, who the main characters are. I want you to identify the inciting incident, the debate, the decision, the fun and games, the midpoint, the bad guys close in, the all is lost, the dark night of the soul, the finale, and the climax, followed by the dénouement and the closing image. You need to find all of those things for your homework in either a television episode or a film. And all of them have it, especially the good ones. If it's missing one of those, well, then you'll know why it didn't work. Or maybe this writer has figured out something that you can teach us. So if I can learn something, teach me. Okay, everybody, I can't wait to see what you bring, and I'll see you soon.